Committee, and I call this meeting to order and welcome all of you, committee members, advisors, staff, on-site visitors, and online listeners to this quarterly meeting. At this time, I'd like to recognize two special guests. Dr. Lynn Harvey, Director of School Nutrition and School District Operation. Would you like to say?
I would love to. Good morning, and thank you so much for the opportunity to join you again today. Welcome to DPI. We appreciate the time that you're investing in today's meeting, not only in pre-preparation and the events of the day, but of also continuing to safeguard the work that goes into driver education in your respective areas. We're so pleased to have this outward-facing committee as an opportunity to allow for input from all partners to help strengthen and make our driver education program the best in the country. And we know that your representation of your various stakeholder groups means so much when it comes to this table. As we look at the progress that's been made over the past years, and we look at the opportunities that lie ahead, we know that there are going to be a few challenges. There'll continue to be those great opportunities for making progress, and of course, among the challenges will be one of your topics today, and how we navigate the rules-making environment. That helps us to grow stronger every day, certainly. But we look forward to your input in making those the most robust they can be, so that we can do all we can to prepare our students for the opportunities that lie ahead for safe transportation. Again, we welcome you into the building. If you have needs that we may assist with, we're happy to do so. As you may be well aware, restrooms are located to the back of this particular area, down either hallway. Water fountains are there as well. Wish we had a vending machine on this site. That's just something we have very little of in this environment, and I'm afraid some of that responsibility might lie with me, if you look at both the topics that we have going on in the school nutrition district operations. But we do welcome you, and we'll do all that we can to accommodate your visit today. Thank you again, not only for your hard work today and all the previous meetings, but all that you do every day to ensure that we have a safe and wholesome environment for our youngsters. Thank you for the privilege of being here.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the leadership that you've shown over the years, and having the opportunity to work with you. And many of us around this room and on the video have had an opportunity to work with you and see the great strength that you've provided to DPI and all the things that I know you used the word challenges, but the opportunities, you also used the word that we can navigate through and get completed and make a success all the way around. So thank you.
My privilege. Thank you.
And also I'd like to introduce Dr. Robert Taylor, who is the Department State Superintendent, and we appreciate so much you being here.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. Deputy Superintendent, I don't
I can't even read my own writing. Well, you know, I usually say things that are premonitions, so who knows? Wow.
I can see her just running down the hall now.
Wow. Well, we don't want to line up for that reading, don't we?
I
Thank
need to
you.
go with some lottery numbers.
Yeah.
After this meeting,
I am successful in that too, by the way.
Okay.
We can take up on
You
that.
better believe.
So Dr. Lynn, obviously, thank you for your leadership, and Mr. Logan, thank you for yours as well. It's always great to follow Dr. Harvey, because she'll say everything that you need to say. So. But I will say that I know that Carl has put a lot of work in the rules portion. That's going to be talked about in the later portion of this meeting, so you guys will have an opportunity to see how that's going to flesh out in the end. I think Brandon is with us. He's on the line. But I just can't say enough, as Dr. Harvey said, for the work that you guys do as part of this committee to guide the work of Drivers Ed. I think you all figured out how very important this work is during the pandemic. And I've said this to you before, but this is when we absolutely recognize how critical driver education is, not only in our state, but in our communities. And so the work that you do is really important in how we change the things that happen here, how we make it actually better than what it is. The great thing that I learned being a part of this division is the leadership that we actually have in Carl and what he does at the national level, the things that he's trying to push to keep North Carolina first when it comes to these kinds of things. So I'm just glad to be here. As Dr. Harvey said, I'll stay as long as I can. I know I have some other things that are going to pull me away, but I just cannot say thank you enough to each and every one of you being here to help guide the work that we do, the make this good for our students. And at some point, we're all impacted by young drivers. All three of my kids have been through driver's ed, and thank you, Lord. But it's important, and people in the communities recognize that, and we ask that you continue to lend your voice to help guide this work so we can improve what we do. But again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Impact might not be a good word to use.
Change agent, whatever you do, but impact you, right.
And I would agree, the DPI staff is phenomenal, and they, with the leadership of Carl and the others, Cindy, all of them, it's just, it makes the streamline of information go so much easier, and knowing that he does serve on national levels is a great plus to North Carolina, because we're out there, and we always like to be reminded that North Carolina is the best in the nation, and we're always out there as number one, and people use models that we have as their model and their takeaway. So we're delighted that we have him, and I know that there are others across the nation that try to take him. The conversations that come up about that, so we are not going to allow that to happen. So just, yeah. So thank you both again for being here, and please stay as long as you're able to, and we welcome that. Okay, so as all of you are aware, this meeting is being recorded, and so we ask those that are on the video if you will speak up loudly, and anyone here, if you'll just raise your hand, and we'll be calling on you for input along the way. If at any time during this meeting you have comments, please let us know, because we're certainly interested to hear what you have to provide. Our agenda and materials are available online through the DPI website, and all of you should have that in front of you at this point under the driver education section of www.dpi.nc.gov. The meeting, again, is audio streamed through a link located at the bottom of the Driver's Education Advisory Committee page. So please, once again, we're being recorded. I'm now going to read the ethics statement that's required of us. Committee members are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this committee. Does any member of the committee know of any conflict of interest or any appearance of conflict with respect to any matters coming before us at this meeting? Okay. If so, please state them for the record. It looks like there are none. If during the course of the meeting you become aware of an active or apparent conflict of interest, please bring the matter to the attention of the chair. It will then be your duty to abstain from participating in discussion on the matter and from voting on the matter. Okay. The purpose of our committee, of course, shall be to advise and make recommendations to the State Board of Education through the Department of Public Instruction on the implementation of the North Carolina Driver Education Strategic Plan and other issues related to driver education and traffic safety. So all of you now have an agenda and meeting minutes that you've had an opportunity to review. And what I'd like to do is propose a time for you to make sure that you've reviewed those, and ask if there are any requests for changes to the agenda or the minutes of last meetings. None? All right. So I would ask the floor to entertain a motion to approve, and we'll do this separately, approve the agenda and also to approve the minutes. If I could have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
And that's Ms. Hatcher. And second?
Second, Devin
Okay,
Tanner.
Devin Tanner. Okay, thank you. All right, could I also have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, and a second to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second, great. All right, thank you all very much. And now I'll ask to turn it over to Cindy Taylor to call roll to capture the vote.
Dr. Cheryl Leonard,
yes on both.
Eddie Jordan,
Yes.
Craig Uzel,
Yes.
Dr. Darian Jones, Kevin Harrison,
Yes.
Carol Ann Hudgens,
Yes.
Reba Baker,
Yes.
Daniel Carter,
Yes.
Michael Newsom,
Michael Newsom not here as of yet.
Devin Tanner,
Yes.
Hygon Kapikian, Christy Daltrey,
Yes.
Captain Gary Brown, Chad Aharon,
Yes.
Asim McGill,
Yes.
Natalie O'Brien,
Yes.
Kella Hatcher,
Yes.
Dr. Kashi Bazemore, and Owen Dara.
Yes.
All right, you have a quorum, Dr. Leonard.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor, appreciate that. Okay, so our next item is the DPI update and discussion, and I will turn that over to Carl and Tanya, who will be talking about the driver's education policies as well as some data information that will be pertinent to our discussions. So, Mr. Logan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to everybody. Thank you for being here, those online as well. As we move into this post-pandemic phase, adjustments to policy prompted us to move forward in making some recommendation to impacting classroom delivery methods, which could not wait until this meeting. So at the November State Board of Education meeting in Pembroke, North Carolina, DPI presented changes to the policy of Drive 004, allowing blended classroom delivery methods and strategies. These are expected to be approved by the State Board of Education in December, at the December meeting. So each of these instructional strategies will create a flexibility at the local boards of education and more effectively serve us as we move into a phase where we are will be implementing our standardized and digitized curriculum. We are encouraging teachers to use as many modalities as possible to promote learning of our many demographics and cultures and learning styles, as well as providing easily accessible opportunities for all 134,000 ninth graders that we have eligible for this year, regardless of where they go to school, regardless of where they're enrolled, public, charter, private, home, and federal schools. I didn't leave one out, did I? At more than 1,500 plus 1,500 locations. Our districts are doing a superior job in getting this information out to students, like I said, at all those locations. So the only substantive recommendation was in number 7, and Cindy, can you show that on the screen? There we go. So our request to the State Board of Education was primarily in section 2, number 7, where we state blended delivery is strongly encouraged to support student growth and best practices. So, and also in the definitions that you'll see at the beginning of the policy, we are beginning to add commonly used terms in traffic safety education that will help to also in the rulemaking as recommended by General Counsel. So the addition of these recommendations assists us in providing solutions to administrative challenges also at the local level with student scheduling. Next was a recommendation number 8 of that policy, where it states, where it focuses on the accommodation of students with disabilities. And you can see that in red. Reasonable accommodations may be considered on a case-by-case basis for students with disabilities under the American Disabilities Act. And you can read the rest of that. Special thanks to Carol Ann Hudgens. You didn't realize that that was going to go in there verbatim the way you wrote it. Be careful what you write, right? So thank you very much for that. Number 9 also is a consideration that for the local school districts to consider the length of a student's instructional day when scheduling them classroom and behind the wheel. So we took those to the State Board of Education. As I said, I strongly believe that this will be passed at the December meeting. So this extends the opportunity for us to continue teaching the way that districts were teaching during the COVID pandemic. Next, and now that I am off my notes, is the fuel reserve policy. The fuel reserve policy is being worked on, is moving forward. It is has several checkpoints, I would say, throughout the agency before it gets out to the districts. However, we don't anticipate that districts will be needing additional fuel monies for this year until the spring, but we are working feverishly, as I said, behind the scenes to get that out to the districts as soon as possible. And now, I will fill until Mrs. Easterwood, who is our driver ed section's project manager, she will be sharing with us some data. And I give you Tanya Easterwood. Are you ready? Almost ready? Cindy, are you live on that? Okay.
Good morning. So this morning what I wanted to share is a little bit about your quarterly reports. So as our leaders previously stated, how important it is for us to collaborate. So one of the things that's going to make us great is the data to support the program. So this morning what I want to do is get back to the place of you guys being able to see your data analytics. Today is a foundation just to show your enrollments from various points of view. And then what this will allow the foundation to also do is us to begin putting in measures so that we can see how we can begin measuring the data that you guys are submitting. So I want to say thank you for us always now consistently having 100% reporting from all of our districts. So the data is currently available on the website, but what you guys will see now is it will transition over to some visualization points where you can kind of drill down by your district. And the tool that we'll be using is called Tableau, which is a data analytics tool that will allow you to do that. So the chart that you're currently seeing this morning, this is actually a range of 3 years from 2019 to 2022. So this is your classroom data. I'm assuming, yeah, it's the classroom data by grade. So if you would notice in 2019, you can actually see how our numbers did change somewhat in the data as it relates to 19, 20, 2021, and 2022. So we actually did more in our 11th grade, in our 10th grade. Which one is that? I can't see that screen. The blue is 9th grade?
Yes.
Okay. So that, I think that is our target. But however, is it our target? We haven't had those discussions. So this is where it's going to be important. We need your voices so we can identify where we need to find what we should be measuring. However, this is a good look as it relates to the number of students that we do support by classroom and by grade. Next slide, Cindy. The next workbook. So what this is just reduplicating the data, and this is actually live data. So what's gonna now also happen is, as you guys are submitting your data quarterly, it will be live as Cindy enters it in by year. So today we have a lot of data because you haven't been able to see the visualization. So this is the same chart, but this is the behind the wheel. So if you notice on this behind the wheel slide, there was a lot more driving going on whenever COVID kind of hit, which shows some of the driving. We drove, we didn't have as many in the classroom, and then we started gradually getting back to the numbers that we were used to seeing. So we don't get as many 8th graders. We do get a lot of 9th graders, 10th graders, and then the higher grades are lower levels as well. So 12th is at the top. You can't see the number 12 on this because it's not enough space for it to display the data sets. And
So-
this data will be available online, but it'll go year to year. So you'll be able to go online in probably about a week from 2019, 2020 to actually drill down to see these exact numbers. However, it will only show that year, and then I will have 1 year that shows comparisons. So moving forward, we'll have 3 years of data available online, and then the rest of it will be internally, and we can share as requested.
So Tanya, the column on the left is, what year is that?
2019, the first column is 19.
And the next one is,
2019, 2020 is the first column. The middle column is 2020 to 2021, and then the final column is 2021 to 2022.
so the first two columns have a COVID impact.
Yes.
A pandemic impact.
Yes, they do.
And so currently, or this past year, we had a significant number of kids being served.
Yeah, you can see the drastic change,
Right.
or the increase, yes.
Okay.
I'd be interested to even go back a year, the 18, 19, to see what that looked like before.
We did agree, however, we had a small team, so we were not 100% reporting, and I didn't want to show the gaps in the reporting for 2018-19. However, if that is something you guys would like to see, I will show that data, but I would not want to put it on the website to show, the gaps, because we were rebuilding in that phase.
Yeah, and I understand that.
But yes,
It
to your
makes
point,
sense.
agree.
It would be interesting though, as internally, just to actually see what information that we did have,
Mm-hmm.
to see if it even, and how many reporting agencies we had, or how many reports we had to compare it with.
Okay, and I can share that data with you guys. I'll take that as a takeaway, and then that maybe that's something we can share with the committee, and that's not a problem at all. I have the
Thank
data.
you, Carl.
No, I was going to mention your name, Reba Baker with Division Motor Vehicles. Obviously, we're in close partnership with Division, and that eventually down the road, what we would like to be able to do is share certain types of information with DMV, especially with driver license, because our students end up downstream at the license office.
Right.
So they would be able to see the ebbs and flows of students throughout the 4 quarters of the year, and what age levels they are. So
Agree. I think that this is important information to share with the division because it helps us know what our flow is going to be in the future. Like, we have a massive amount of people that came, so now we can expect a massive amount of people to
True.
come. Or we're having a lull, so that's probably why we're having a lull. You know what I mean?
And in addition to that is that we could create heat maps where we could see where the crashes and collisions, the crashes and fatalities are occurring in what districts
That would be
within the state,
perfect.
right?
That way we could focus more.
Right. Am I talking
I'm a
too fast?
statistic person. I'm a project manager too.
I just got punched under the table, y'all.
I don't know, I have no idea. Shirley, did
She
you
will,
know?
Tanya will be able to do that, folks. She'll be able to do that.
So,
Right, Dr. Taylor?
And one more question, Tom.
yes,
So, I know you said that you can see it in real time. Are you going to have, like, if you have 100 people that report, are you gonna be able to see that only 80% have report? Okay.
I actually have those data analytics available. However, a little birdie said that could be a little bit overwhelming. So, I just scaled it back, but if you wanna
I did
schedule a
not.
one-on-one, I
Well,
didn't say.
no, the reason I'm saying.
But I do
that-
have the data available, and we can have a one-on-one. It's actually built on the dashboard inside of here already. I have the data readily available.
I was thinking for the end user, like
Mhm.
if somebody says, oh, let me look and see what's going on right now, but maybe only 50% of the people have reported, they're not getting a real picture unless they can see only 50 people, 50% have reported. And then they'll know, okay, well, let me check it next week, and maybe 100% have reported by that time.
That's
all
correct.
I'm
And
saying.
that was, to speak to that was an issue, and so before, we were able to put it in Tableau, but we have been working on so many projects simultaneously. We did identify that, and that was one of the things that contributed to the 100% reporting, because it showed a gap where I would collect the data, and if there was no data reported, it was a blank line. So it caused the conversation for them to say, where are our numbers? What is our data? And so that contributed to them being able to start reporting, and then having Cindy come on board, like, she's calling them like clockwork, like, where your numbers at? So
Right,
we
right.
have, we built a process so that it would, streamline it, so it'd be easy to collect the data. And so now that we have that, they will actually use it and leverage that. So moving towards it, it has increased tremendously since we've moved in that direction, but we do have that previous data available as well.
That's awesome. I think it's great that you have 100%.
We have 100% reporting. Yes,
Means
we
a
actually
lot.
have averages and some of the grade points and pass fail rates as well. I've built those data dashboards as well. And we're starting to collect additional data, like this year, Cindy, I think we have one more slide. On this slide, what we started doing, no, that's not, is that behind the wheel?
It's both. It's actually the same.
No, it's another one. Yeah, that's it. So the slide that you're getting ready to see now, this is by school type. And what that means is who are we serving? So we are responsible for public, private, federal, charter, and homeschool. So now the numbers that are being entered, it shows where those students are collectively. But now not only that, I also have one by map. You can see where they are. So what the data is gonna be able to do is speak to where the students are, who we are serving consistently. But this is the first year that we got that. Cindy worked really hard with Division of Non-Public, pulling all the numbers in, and so we were able to get it in a file that I could manipulate the data to, not manipulate, actually put it, clean the data, cause it's really scrubbing the data to put it in a
Organize it,
formatted, so that I can actually use it in Tableau. So actually putting the visualizations to the numbers, and so you guys will get to see this more. This is only 21-22. This is the first year that we've collected this enrollment data. However, this is gonna be building blocks, and so I say that to say, again, thank you for the reporting. It's critical to what we do, but, and whenever I get to look at the numbers, it's gonna help us identify gaps. What do we need to serve? We have funding going into districts, but is there enough funding in those districts to support the behind the wheel or the classroom? And also putting more visualization around, it's not just driver education, it's an introduction to traffic safety and the importance of traffic safety. So driver education is just that introduction across the state, and so how do we begin building the correlation between the two with the crash data? How do we begin to say or identify these are students that are not included in the allotment, so how do we begin identifying that information? So these numbers will lay the foundation for Carl to be able to say, these are the numbers to support the information that we're doing with driver education. And this is why we need what we need, and how do we meet those needs, not just across the state, but these are also the numbers that'll help us with the work moving forward nationally, so.
Great job.
That
So-
concludes are there any additional questions?
I
Yes.
think-
Just, I was gonna make a comment, there was a mention of crash data at some point, and just wanted to associate my name with that. If you need anything, tables or maps or anything, that's what my unit does, so we can provide that.
Perfect.
And I was gonna tag on to that, I didn't see you, Daniel. DOT has a special unit that looks at all the data, the crashes and injuries across the state. We also might wanna tap in or even have a meeting between yourself and DMV and the data that you're collecting to see how we can streamline it and look at the same variables if that's a possibility. I can't say that I'm an expert about data. I don't get as excited as you do, or as Tanya does, but I know how vital it is and how important and how much we rely on Daniel in very short periods of time, that we need information quickly to be able to not only provide to reporters, but to decide and help make decisions quickly on policy. And I did have a question in your variables. You're talking about where they're at. Are you talking about rural versus urban, or where they're at in the sense of what types of training places that they're being trained at?
So two things. So one, location. Where are they located within the state? So we do have a map that shows and breaks down by SBE district, so we can locate where they are in the state. Futuristically, what we want to do is where are our learners, so that we can identify those gaps, so that we can begin identifying what is it in our curriculum that we need to teach. So it may be some up, some down, because we do collect some of that data. So yeah, how do we meet the learners where they are? And so this lays the foundation for us to build towards those numbers. But until this lays the foundation for us to get there. But I think those numbers are critical now that we are in an environment where we are hybrid learning. So they may be face-to-face, they may be online, it may be a mix of the two, and we can't serve a community in a hybrid learning environment if we don't have the data to support it and understand what those needs are, not only for the students, but also for the teachers and the district. So connectivity matters. The availability matters. We can have a standardized curriculum to make sure that they have the information they need, so everyone has the same thing, but how they learn, how the teachers learn and teach, and how we deliver that is critical. So the data will teach us, kind of point us in the right direction, and give it a voice.
Okay. And I know we have such an eclectic group of individuals serving on this committee, as well as those that are listening in. And not everybody might not know what the variables are that people are reporting on, that you're getting the data from. Is there any way that we can get a listing of what is being reported?
Well, currently, if you were to go to our driver ed website on NCDPI, and I would have to actually share how to find it.
We can make that available to the
But we
committee.
can send a link, but it's high level just by grade currently. Our goal, though, is because we do have such a diverse group, is to begin having the conversations of, I don't know everything, but to collectively we can identify what those needs are, so we can identify those new measures. So yes, what we currently have is available on the website and can be shared. And then as we begin building forward, that information will also be shared publicly.
So it's available to the coordinators, the local coordinators now,
Yes, because they.
but the committee is not, but we can make that available to you. Okay. In addition to what Tanya just stated, we are faced in some challenging times with teacher recruitment and retention. And we feel that collection of this data will help us to assist the districts in, I would call it, teacher sharing, being now that we have the ability to have not only classroom without walls, but we have districts without walls, being that you could be able to share teachers across county lines or district lines. So as we continue moving forward, we'll look at all kinds of strategies to assist us in this particular area, and I mean, we'll follow the direction that it takes us. I'm sure that DMV can also attest to the challenges that are going on there across the state with the commercial schools.
Very much so.
And with that, if there are no other questions for DPI, I'll give it back to the chair temporarily.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much, that was great work.
It was. That's excellent. And we look forward to more data, more information, and maybe the collaboration between DMV and DOT, and looking at crashes and injuries across the state. So, and the training to prevent all those crashes and injuries. Zero. Yeah. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is turn it over to the Vice Chair, Chad Aaron, who will preside over the subcommittee update portion of this agenda. Chad?
Thank you, Dr. Leonard. We understand the following is a request to 3 of our standing subcommittees. Committee members, please see the handout for committee assignments and the documents. We will now hear from requests from DPI.
Thank you, Chad. DPI is in the midst of a decennial rules review for the department, and we are lucky to have with us Mr. Brandon Walker, his Assistant General Counsel for DPI's Office of General Counsel, who will give us a brief overview on this process, and then and I'll return with a request of the committee. Brandon, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks, Carl. I appreciate your kind words. Again, I'm Brandon Walker, and I am one of the rulemaking coordinators here at DPI, along with Tom Zyko. And as part of our responsibility, and again, and what we have attached to the slides or to the presentation are slides that I'm not going to take credit for. These were developed by the Rules Review Commission, and they do a nice job of providing an overview about what we're going to discuss. But I want to really just kind of keep it focused on education and the state board and how it relates to driver education. So I'm not sure how familiar everybody is, but back in 2018, the North Carolina Supreme Court decided that the State Board of Education is subject to the rulemaking authority of the Rules Review Commission. So as part of that responsibility, we as the State Board and the Department of Public Instruction have the duty to review the rules, just like every other state agency, and essentially cull the books, determine what rules are necessary, what rules are unnecessary, and get rid of the unnecessary rules, take a look at what we've determined as necessary, and then really ask the questions, is this how we're actually doing business? Because when we're talking about rules, we're trying to enforce the outward-facing public. We're not talking about internal policies and how we conduct things within DPI or the State Board of Education internally. This is outward-facing. We're gonna affect the public at large. So in order to do that, we have to have the authority of a rule. So as part of the decennial rule review process, we're taking a look at the rules, and the number one question that I've been asking everybody is this actually how we're doing business? And these rules, a lot of them have been on the books for 20 plus years. And, things change, as everybody knows. So turns out, come to find out, that's not how we're doing business, and we want to change things. And that's what Carl and his team have been really diligent about doing. And they're one of the fast-moving departments that are actually taking charge, trying to lead by an example here. And they've given us a lot of revisions. So that's what everybody's looking at today, is those revisions that are attempting to reflect how driver's education is being conducted in the state of North Carolina today. And as we know, we've gone through the pandemic. Things have changed in terms of online learning and things of that nature. So what Carl and his team have been able to do is define some of those more difficult terms, identify that there's other ways of learning, and trying to put that into focus as we're moving forward with the rulemaking process. Really, and I could talk, if everybody's having trouble sleeping, I can keep going because, this is a pretty exciting topic. But really, I think this is just a good opportunity for everybody to provide any thoughts or questions, because I think what we're driving at here.
Brandon, do you mind going through a little bit of the rulemaking process itself on basically?
Sure. So there's a variety of ways to make rules, but right now we're not responding to any new changes in the legislature or things of that nature. So we're going through the more traditional process called the permanent rulemaking process. And with that, we start just like we're starting now. We get feedback from interested stakeholders. Everybody dives in, they look at the rules, and when we come up with a final product that we're happy with, and again, this is outward facing. So anytime you want to mandate anybody to do anything, if you want to force or have the effect of law, you want to turn it into a rule. So once we've captured that, then we're going to open it up for public comment, and we notice it on our website, and we have, I think it's a 60-day notice period. It goes through. We publish the proposed rule. We give a time and place for the hearing. We hold a public comment hearing. If we do it right, there shouldn't be a whole lot of pushback or anybody that shows up. Sometimes, for instance, the last rule that we took through was relating to athletics. And we were partnered with the Athletic Association, the different stakeholders involved, and put together a really nice rule that everybody bought into. Go to the public comment period, and we have one person show up, and they're from the disabilities rights advocates. And they said, hey, great rule, but we would love for you to add ADA language in there. Fine. It's not going to change the meaning of the rule. It's frankly already implied, but if that's going to satisfy that stakeholder, it was an easy enough change. We did it. No issue. It went through, and everybody was happy. What could happen is if you have a messier rule where you get some pushback and you don't have all the buy-in, is when you have 10 objections to the rule that come in as public comments, and it only takes 10, and it's a low number when you're putting this out to the whole state to provide feedback. And when you get those 10 comments, then it triggers additional oversight from the General Assembly and their legislative committees. And it delays the process considerably. So it's always advisable to really take this proposed rule, seriously up front, do the legwork up front, so we don't run into some of those hurdles down the road. Once you survive the public comment period, then it will go over to the Rules Review Commission, and they're going to dissect every single word that we put on the page. And they're sticklers, and they're really good at what they do, but they have a pattern, and they have ways of writing things that we're really familiar with. So, for instance, the word shall. They don't like wishy-washy terms or things that are left to interpretation. They want to be very strict and upfront, and that makes sense because we're trying to get the community to follow what we want them to say, and the best way to do that is to be clear and concise. So we go back and forth with the Rules Review Commission, tighten up the language, and then we submit it for final approval to the commission itself, the Rules Review Commission, that is. That whole process, if we do it right, 6 to 8 months is a realistic time frame. If we have some added objections, now you're looking at 1.5 years, almost 2 years. So it varies wildly, and that's why I couldn't encourage more just to put the legwork in up front. And I'll applaud Carl and his team because they've done that, and we've already had some back and forths to tighten up and provide definitions and things of that nature. But as we were going through the presentation here today, I've noticed a couple words that we could probably use better language. So it's a process. It's no different than writing anything else. You think you have a masterpiece, and then you pick it up the next day, and you want to put it in the trash. So that's just kind of the world that we're living in, and we have to just play in that sandbox. So I hope I answered your question, Carl.
You did. One additional question: rules versus policy.
Sure. And again, it goes back to my earlier statements. A policy is something that is that's a nice ideal. It's something to strive for. If it's outward facing to the public, just understand that if someone told you to go fly a kite tomorrow and they're not going to listen to your policy, yeah, we're kind of stuck. That's why we turn things into rules, and rules have the force and effect of law, and we can force people to do what we want them to do based on the rule. A policy can really just provides additional insight, and frankly, they're really intended to regulate the internal goings on in the department itself. It's things involving human resources, things involving, can you have a heater under your desk? Like those type of policies. Policies can provide additional insight and thought about what the agency's intent is behind a rule, and that's well and good. But they're not designed to be enforced. They provide additional insight. So if someone wanted to challenge a rule, and they're arguing based on the intent, did you intend for classes to be driver's education classes to be virtual, or did you intend for 100% of the classes to be in person? Well, now we can look at our policy, and policies can have intent statements. The rules can't. The rules have to be very specific and concise and tailored to what we want to do. I hope I'm not rambling, but I hope that makes sense.
It does. Thank you very much. Are you going to be able to hang around a little bit?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm happy to do whatever you guys need me to do. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you much. And just for a quick notation, Vice Chair Aharon, you want to talk about the committee members or the subcommittee members, or should we come back to that?
It's your call.
Carl, can I ask one
Yes.
question, just from my knowledge? Do you all run every one of your laws through public comment?
State board policy, no. But these rules will be. It will follow the North Carolina rules, whatever the RRCs.
I just wondered.
Correct. And there's a couple. I'm sorry for jumping in, but there's a couple of things. So there's the law, and that comes from the General Assembly, and they're going to give us money, tell us what they want us to do. The only way that we wouldn't have to do a rule, which is to implement the law, would be if the General Assembly told us that we didn't have to do that. And some legislation does that and says, okay, I want you DPI, I want you State Board to do X, Y, and Z, but you don't have to go through the rulemaking process. Great. Then we can use our policies. That's rare, but you do see it. What typically happens is the General Assembly says, I want you DPI and State Board to do X, Y, and Z. Now we're charged with putting a rule together to implement that law. And our rule is going to have that same force and effect of law. And then as an agency, you can adopt a policy to interpret that rule. Now that's not going to be binding on anybody, but it does show the intent behind what you're trying to accomplish in the rule. So it's kind of a hierarchy where it goes the law, the rule, the policy, and it all kind of distills in that order.
I just wondered if there was some sort of policy that said, or law that said that you had to run any changes through public comment, because obviously when we do our administrative changes for the rules, we do not run everything by public comment. We use statistics or whatever it is to have those rules changed. So I wondered if it was like a policy, a law, or.
Well, 150B is is the law that governs rulemaking. So like I think we've got to be very careful with the terminology that we're using, because if it's not published in the administrative code, then it's not a rule. And part of the process of getting it published in the administrative code to become a rule is that public comment period. So now you could have a temporary rule that can avoid and shorten the process. So the General Assembly said, we've changed the law. We need you to make a rule. That rule needs to be implemented in the next 180 days. Well, then you eliminate some of the public comment periods just by nature of going through the temporary rule process.
Thank you, I was just curious.
So thanks, Brandon. So now, I guess you're wondering what this has to do with you. This is what my request is. We have, driver education has 3 rules that need to be updated. And also, most people don't realize this in the public, is that there are actually 2 driver education programs in the state of North Carolina, teaching the same thing, different rules. Our conversations with DMV, our DMV partners, has been to align these policies. Some years ago, before me, I'm assuming that there were rules that the driver education program had to adhere to. They are no longer listed, and that's what our efforts are to do now. In order to make sure, and I always tell people, I said, I know a lot about driver education, but I don't know everything. But I know enough people to know that we can cover everything that we need to cover. Don't ask me to repeat that. So what our efforts are to do here is to use the format of this committee to do somewhat allow the stakeholders a voice in this as well. So I'm going to recommend to the chair that we use this committee and the subcommittees to host discussions on the proposed rules that DPI will be proposing, and then the subcommittees will have the opportunity to recommend these back to the committee, and obviously the committee itself has the ability to recommend to state board policy. Excuse me, they have the ability to recommend to State Board of Education through DPI. So this is going to be a working partnership. This is what I'm proposing, actually, should it be accepted. And what I'd like to do is I'd start with number 1, this the program administration. You have 3 standing, you actually have 5 standing subcommittees that this first policy, Drive 004, which is a policy, and the rules, which is 16 NCAC.0301, is our program requirements. And what we have done is we've already started a draft of those changes. What we would like to do is we would like to submit those to the committee to be assigned to the subcommittees, and that the subcommittees would have meetings. I'm proposing that it would possibly be done in 1, it could be as many as 3 meetings over the next 3 months, is to go through, make recommendations to the committees, back to the committee on any changes or deletions that DPI is proposing. So we have actually, like I said, we have 3 policies, we have 3 administrative rules. The policies actually can come later on, because once we have rules, or I will follow the advice of General Counsel Brandon and the team downstairs to make those changes in policy. And Cindy, if you'll go on to the 2 slides more. So this is our, so the one I was just talking about is how the program operates itself, to the recommendations. Our plans are to use the DMV administrative rules that are in place, that are written out specifically for driver education, to adopt the majority of those, if not all of them. And then we also have teacher certification, which is this one. The teacher certification rules have not been updated in quite some time. There are national standards that we'll be able to offer as a guide. DPI will put those in place, and those subcommittees will be able to discuss those. What's needed tremendously is the screening and selection process of teachers at the local level, also mentors and professionals, recertification of professional teachers with DNB certification and paraprofessionals. Actually, because where DNB rules end when it's outside of the commercial schools. I don't want to say purview, but outside of the scope of the commercial schools. Being that our driver education program is being taught within the schools, there has to be subtle changes about them, but there's no rules in place to govern that. So we have to put those in place. So there needs to be a renewal process for teachers who do not have a DPI teacher's license, or either whether they're professionals or paraprofessionals. And then Cindy, you can go to the 2 slides more, would be the expectations for, actually that's too many, or did we get that out of order? It is for contracting. There are rules in place for contracting, so we will need to update those to make those consistent with any other recommendations or current practices that are being done or aligned with DMV rules, if I said that correctly. So, so the expectations here in review is basically to recommend this process to this committee, through the subcommittees, to make recommendations back to the State Board of Education through DPI, and then before we get to that point, obviously we work with the General Counsel's office to make to further this into the rulemaking process. I think I got through it and created a lot of confusion.
So let me ask a quick question. I'll get up you guys here. So in terms of the teacher certification piece,
yes,
are you just suggesting changes to the rules, or actually changes to the whole certification process and recertification process?
Not asking for changes to the current policy in teacher certification. There is actually, we're lacking a rule to support that process. So as much as it may not be needed that we need to have any updates to the rule based on what General Counsel tells us, but if there is, then we would need to put that in codified in rules.
Okay.
Right. But a couple of years ago, we created a teacher certification program which completed the policy. We got lucky and
Right.
hit all the spots on that one.
Well, and it's a little bit confusing just because of the timing of things. Because up until 2018, DPI and the State Board of Education did a lot of their rulemaking through policies. So policy and rule, the terms were used interchangeably. So we do have some policies and we do have some rules. We have policies that look like rules. We have rules that look like policies. And that's what we're trying to clean up right now. So if our policy is outward facing and we want to enforce it, now we got to turn it into a rule. If we have a rule that doesn't talk in terms of mandatory language, it doesn't say shall, instead it says may, or it gives an exception of some kind that defeats the whole purpose of the rule. Well, that's more of a policy. So we have to turn it. It's kind of a morass right now, but that's just kind of the sandbox that we have to play in right now. It won't look like that once we have it all cleaned up moving forward, but yeah, it's a little bit cumbersome and confusing right now.
I'm sure that we've confused the committee, but trust us, we know what we're doing. We'll lead everyone through this, but we're looking forward to this. This is something that's needed to be addressed for quite some time, and looking forward to getting this in our rearview mirror.
And I can't emphasize it enough. This is the time to put in the legwork. Take a look at the hard work Carl and his team have done, and you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings by pushing back and saying, "Hey, this isn't quite clear. What do you mean by this? How about we do things?" Whatever the case may be. I mean, that's the feedback that we need, so everybody's satisfied when we try to move this rule forward, because that's going to be the most efficient way to do it.
So ultimately, our goal is standardization, and that's what we have to have, because right now we can't. It is challenging to measure the result of the program, and to use something that Mr. Zyko, who's the state board counsel for rulemaking, said to me is that right now the measure for this program is how many kids pass the driver license test, and that's we all agree that that's not a good measure of such, and so the DMV and DPI have long agreed that we need to move forward on a better way of making that measuring the success of the program. I think I almost heard somebody else say something. Not hearing any others' comments, our goal would be to come back after this meeting, once you had a chance to review the subcommittees that you're on and which document you will be able to work on updating, is to have a doodle poll, find out the meeting dates, and then we would elect a chair in each one of those meetings. DPI would serve as staff in each one of those meetings to take the notes, and also we would like to have this done by, and this is aggressive, by January the 27th, so we can put it back on this agenda calendar to bring it before the committee by February the 15th. And Tanya Easterwood, our project manager, will be getting in touch with you as far as the doodle poll and figuring out which date would be available for folks on the first meeting. Also in the room here, I told her yesterday I was going to embarrass her, Carol Ann Hudgens, who is doing something similar in Exceptional Children. You have any comments?
Not substantively. I mean, our policies that are in place, like has already been said, have to go through the rulemaking process now as a result of the 2018. Exceptional Children is a little tiny bit different because we try to be overly cautious about our stakeholders and their feedback, and we generally try to do seeking of that input, public comment. I don't want to confuse that with the formal rulemaking process, but essentially we will do extensive work with our stakeholders before we even take anything to the state board or the rules commission, because if there is going to be a lot of opposition, we want to know it ahead of time and not have an uncomfortable moment in front of everyone. Exceptional Children's Program tends to get a lot of feedback, so we work with our stakeholders in advance.
And we're generally on the same page. That's why I called you yesterday. We're generally on the same page as that this is a massive undertaking, that this is not, the items that we're proposing have not been written that I know of. And so that we would like for our stakeholders to work with us on as we move forward in this process. So thank you, Carol Ann. Mr. Vice Chair, Madam Chair, if I could make the recommendation on behalf of DPI to assign these to our subcommittees. Chad?
Nope, I recommend this request be considered as well and submitted as well.
Okay. So I think it's a great opportunity for these committees. I know we've got a handout here that identifies the names of individuals that are on the committee. Many of you volunteered for these in previous meetings, so if you are still interested in being on these committees, let us know. If you want to be added to another committee, let us know that. This is certainly an opportunity for us to all be part about making recommendations to the State Board of Education and the implementation of the strategic plan. I agree with everything you've presented, Carl. Do you think we need to do a formal recommendation vote? No, typically we wouldn't, but.
You all see which subcommittees that you've been appointed to, voluntold to,
Yeah.
participate in. If you'd like to participate in all of them, you can. I mean, that's totally up to the committee chair.
Okay, well, I agree, and I agree with all the appointments, so we'll just go with that, and,
Without any changes, Ms. Easterwood, you would use that list, and we have email addresses to everyone on the committee. Also, this being a public meeting, these subcommittees are public meetings, that the general public would be, well, we would post this on the appropriate sites for advertising, okay?
Is there a best average day of the week? A better day during the week, so I don't select full week? Doesn't matter, Tuesday, Thursday, just not Monday, Friday?
Yeah, that sounds good.
No Monday, Fridays.
Yeah.
and will some of these meetings, have a virtual option?
They are all virtual.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
I'm still pushing for the.
Just to kind of give you an idea of what this could work like, I'm serving on 2 right now at the national level, is that basically we would have the document in front of everyone would have access to this live document on the DEAC website, and that you could see the changes throughout and keep abreast of what's going on with the documents that moves forward. Then once we get to a point where we want to make the recommendation, then we would get that back to the agenda item, and then on to the state, onto the appropriate channels, Mr. Walker's office as well.
So when you say live document, you are allowing other people to come in and make edits as they see fit?
On the document itself, Cindy, correct me if I'm not wrong, each person at the committee that has access to the documents can make comment in the columns. And so when we get to when we have the meetings, you can actually already see some of the comments that have been made by committee members. Just the committee members, not the stakeholders. Only committee members, right? Okay. All right.
But hypothetically, if I'm not, and I'm not me per se, but if, say, Kella's not on the meeting in that particular committee meeting, could she go in and look at the document and make a recommendation as well?
All the committee members would have equal access to it.
Okay.
The ones that are on the subcommittees are just the ones who've designated that they're actually going to be in attendance for that meeting. But any one of the committee members could actually make comment on the documents as we move them forward.
Is it basically like a Word document with markup
There you go.
That's it.
comments?
Without saying it, I should have said it. I should let you say that.
Just saying.
That's why you're here, Rita. Thank you very much. Thanks, Dr. Taylor.
I know DOT has that technology, I just don't know about everybody.
Now, I love
else,
the
so.
OneDrive, that
Yeah.
When we-
give people edit rights, my employees, depending on what it is, but.
Yeah. And this is an opportunity, I think, too, if you find yourself on a committee that you are on, but you really want to be on something else, or you have input, because there's such a wide grasp of knowledge here on the committee that everybody's input in different areas would be quite useful and helpful, and would help, I think, navigate the overall review of information within a 2 to 3 day period, as opposed to letting it drag out. Because definitely if we want to get it by Mr. Logan's deadline of January 27th, so we'll need to move quickly. With all that said, we definitely appreciate your dedication and commitment to to serving on these committees in advance, and definitely your commitment to be able to be available when they do the Google poll, and to be able to provide your input, because we know you all have busy jobs and you've got a lot on your plate, and here we are the holidays, and that always, adds another caveat to the attention that we all need to provide. So, thank you. Do you have something else you wanted to say? Okay, all right, well then we're good with that.
One question.
Sure.
Some idea of the breadth, depth of what we'd be reviewing, like, let's say a committee is looking over that Word document, on SharePoint or Google Drive or whatever we're referring to. Are we talking about a few rules on one page? Are we talking about many rules on many pages? How is that? Just thinking about the scope.
Yes. What we have, like what I said, DPI would make the recommendations,
Okay.
and that you would be able to see the ones that we've made, question, comment,
Okay.
request to delete, and even request to add. So,
Gotcha.
so in essence, like I said, we're gonna be using DMV's lead quite a bit, but what else should be required of our districts when providing driver education in the public schools?
In other words, you've already done a deep dive.
Yes,
on a lot of this.
right. A lot of the things that we're recommending is based on national standards, and also the recommendations or the issues or the challenges that we've faced in the administration of the program up until now for the past 7 years that I've been here. So we're looking to put those in writing for consistency's sake. When I talk to Mr. Walker down in General Counsel's offices, how can we be consistent? Make sure that what is consistency? And you can comment to that, Brandon, if you'd like to, but consistency is important. And right now, the operations of driver education is Cindy and myself. And very little of this is written anywhere. So how do we codify it, make it so that it can serve the program and build from that? Because as you can tell from the statistics, there's quite a bit of items moving forward that we're gonna have to address in the risk management planning section of the program.
And if I might add, kind of thinking and maybe reading your mind a little bit, I think once you get into the document and start looking around, if you find that we're gonna need more than January 27th as a time frame, because we really need to look at maybe more rules than what might initially be thought, then we'll do that, and we'll hold that off to the meeting after February. But whatever we can get to align, then
Yes.
we obviously want to do it. And we want to start, because like you said, there are some things that are not into place as we would look nationwide or even in other departmental areas of North Carolina that do have substance. So.
In talking with Brandon, Brandon, I don't know if you stated this, but there's 110 rules at DPI you're updating.
There's and then there's more. Every time we're updating a policy, we're looking at our rules. So that's just out of the 10-year review that we're obligated to do. But as we're moving forward, there's new rules coming in each and every month. So it is, I mean, it's a big undertaking, but to Carl's point, consistency is key. And again, once we have the content identified, then it just comes down to using the correct language. And it's boring. It's not a fun way to write. It's very unique. I mean, it's different than what we learned in our third grade writing class, where you want to use as many adjectives and describe things in multiple different ways. I mean, this is very boring, dry writing. We use the same term over and over again. And when you find yourself referring to an old term, you got to ask yourself, well, what am I doing here? Why am I using a new term? So, I mean, we can cross that bridge when we get to it, but the key is just consistency and get the subject matter down.
Great. All right.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yes, thank you, Brandon, and thank you, Carl, and your team for this. So, one point that we want to make is that we've got subcommittees for the advisory committee. And we also have working committees that will pop up frequently to go over things, which brings me to the working committee that was developed for an update of the driver education strategic plan. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Connie Sessoms, who's currently serving as the chair of this working group, to provide some update of that. Is he here?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and warmest greetings to all of you who do this work. I've done this a long time, and I have to say that in my mind, driver education is one of the most important courses that a high school student will ever take. And if you think about that and drill down to the end result, the fact that a child may not get the concepts that we teach could lead to their demise. That's where we are, and that's what we do, and that's how important it is. So I have been charged with helping to update the strategic plan. We have been working for some months now. We are nearing the end of this work. And for those listening, I would like to say a public thank you for those who have hung in there with us. All of us have busy lives, but thank you for those who have jumped on our web meetings and helped us to talk through, offer their ideas, and get this work done. The process required that we delete old and out-of-date directives. We did that. Any new initiatives, we added those in. We revised the language and we kept it at a high level. It is broad and encompassing. We are near finishing this document. I expect we will have it. We've been meeting monthly. We will have our December meeting. We may need a January meeting, but we're going to see how December goes, and so we will be near finished with the document in December, possibly January. Our goal is to get it turned over to the larger Driver Education Advisory Committee by February. This document has a probable 5-year shelf life. It's going to need to be revised again pretty soon. We are going to beef up the glossary, as in any document where lots of people are going to read. A glossary is important because the way I use a word may not be the same way the public uses that word, and we want to define what that word means. So we're going to beef up our glossary for better understanding. One thing COVID, you can say all you want to say about COVID, and COVID probably deserves it. But one thing COVID taught us is that we were not as prepared as we needed to be for such an event. So we're going to build in a risk management plan, a risk assessment, and an emergency preparedness plan into this strategic plan. So we're trying to cover all bases. I think we're pretty close to being there. We're going to give this document over to the Driver Education Advisory Committee for their evaluation. It will probably then go on to the legal department and Brandon's office for their advice and consent. And then this document will go on to the State Board of Education for adoption. So that's kind of the process. That's where we are. We are near our end. you will have an opportunity to weigh in on the changes that we've made, and we hope that you will give some advice in that direction. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Sessom, and we do appreciate you taking the lead on the strategic plan and meeting with your committee. Is there anybody on the committee that's on the long line or here in the room that would like to add anything to what's already been said? Okay, we look forward to your resolve and all your edits and your information, hopefully by February. If there's anything that we can do to work with you on this, please don't hesitate to reach out, and thank you again. We appreciate it very much, and for the update. In addition to the old business, we have a mission statement proposal that we'd like to present to everyone. It has been drafted by the DPI staff, and it was created over a number of months, and we'd like to entertain a motion unless there's any edits or additions to this. Composed of experienced and diverse perspectives, the Driver Education Advisory Committee provides research-based information and recommendations to the State Board of Education to implement and maintain the Driver Education Strategic Plan. The Advisory Committee advocates for certified professional teachers, high quality instruction, and up-to-date curricula to prepare each student to be an informed and responsible driver. If I could get a motion to approve that?
A motion.
Okay, could I get a second? Thank you.
I'll second
Second,
it. I thought
okay.
somebody did,
Thank
but
you.
yeah.
Thank you, Kelly.
Seems pretty directed to the point.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Motion carries. Call to vote. To do that?
You want to do a roll call, Cindy?
Okay. Dr. Leonard?
Yes, approved.
Eddie Jordan?
Yes.
Craig Uzone?
Approve.
Kevin Harrison?
Yes.
Carolyn Hutchins?
Yes.
Reba Baker?
Yes.
Daniel Carter?
Yes.
Devin Tanner?
Yes.
Christy Daltrey?
Yes.
Anna Aharon? Asim McGill?
Yes.
Natalie O'Brien?
Yes.
Kayla Hatcher?
Yes.
Dr. Kashi Bazemore?
Yes.
And Owen Dara?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Looks like the motion is approved to accept the mission statement. Thank you very much. All right, there's one other piece of the old business. We were looking at a select committee members for as a working group, a special working group to review some items. Dr. Bazemore, Carol Ann Hudgens, Kevin Harrison, Kella Hatcher, and Dr. Darren Jones, and the DPI staff. And would you like a formal for that?
Can we deep dive into that and tell them what this is all about?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm gonna defer that to you.
Okay. This committee was created in 2014. Connie Sessoms, I think if you're still online, you can correct me on that. Was one of the first things that was done once the new section chief for driver education came on board. was the creation of this. And of course, it is required by statute that this committee actually exists. However, there have been no operating procedures. And I was talking to Kevin Harrison after our last meeting. It's like, well, are they bylaws? Are they administrative operating procedures? So there's a couple of things that we've got to decide on. Are these going to be bylaws or just operating procedures that this committee or this body operates under? So the recommendation that I've made to Dr. Leonard is that the names that she mentioned, I know have experience with other committees, other such committees, and and we have actually a draft of bylaws that are in place. There's about, I don't know, probably 6 or 7 pages of them that we could pare down, make recommendations to, and that so that we could get these presented to the committee for approval. So that would become our general operating procedures. So that kind of in a nutshell is where we are. So without objection, if those people were willing to work on that with us.
Are you all willing to work on this with us?
I'm just thinking about your February deadline and the deadline with all the other work too. So just trying to think about the scope of work. So you're saying that you basically got bylaws and you need a committee to look it over and tweak it?
Yes.
As opposed to?
Writing them from scratch, yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. And obviously, you're not under any timeline to complete those because we've been operating for 8 years without them.
Gotcha.
So within the bylaws itself, there's one of the items is that the bylaws can be changed by this committee with a 2/3 vote at any time you want to tweak it. So it's just general operating procedures, because right now the operating procedures are unwritten, and we just kind of, and for consistency's sake, using Brandon's consistency term, we need to be consistent on how we operate the business, because this committee actually has to operate under open or public meetings laws, and very strict, right?
I just have a comment.
Yes.
I think that, I hear your concern about knowing the scope of work. Maybe February is a reasonable goal, and we can reevaluate if it is entirely deliverable by that time.
Yeah.
But we'll make our best effort to deliver. How about that?
Absolutely.
As one gifted with a new opportunity.
Excellent. That's perfect.
Okay.
That's perfect. Okay, so I think we've covered all the old business, new business, and I want to thank you all very much, those who are online and those that are here today, the staff, advisors, and staff DPI, for your preparation and all the discussions we've had today. I remind the committee members that our next quarterly meeting will be in this room on February 21st from 10 to 12. I think we've now completed our meeting, unless there's any other additional business that anybody has any comments, questions. If not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
This is Dr. Bazemore, so moved.
Thank you, Dr. Bazemore. And just all yay, nay. Yay. All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That was quite aggressive, but like I said, there's no time now. This will always be, I guess, a living document whenever you want to update. But yeah, there's a lot of the processes that we've created or that we're using have been kind of by experience, observing other advisory committees, Child Task Force even,